One night, the daughter I raised with my own flesh and blood turned the key from the outside, locking me in my bedroom like a dangerous object. By the time she unlocked the door the next morning, wearing a look of smug victory, everything my money, my papers, my right to choose life or death had already slipped through her fingers. That was not the night I lost my freedom. It was the night I finally took it back. My name is Iris Calloway. For 30 years. I balanced the complex ledgers for Evercrest Freight, tracking every cent of overhead and profit that moved across the state of Northwin. I could spot a rounding error of 0.01% from 3 pages away. Yet here I sat, a 62-year-old widow, squeezed into a metal folding chair wedged between the stainless steel kitchen trash can and the drafty sliding door of my daughter's dining room. This was supposed to be a family dinner. The air in the house smelled of expensive candles and roasted garlic. We were in Maple Ridge Estates, a neighborhood where the lawns were manicured to look like green carpet, and the neighbors watched each other through triple-paned glass. Lauren, my daughter, stood at the head of the table. She was holding her phone high, tilting it to capture the perfect angle of the table setting for her 3,000 followers. "Mom, move your elbow." "Please," Lauren said, her voice tight with that fake sweetness she reserved for children and the elderly. "You're ruining the aesthetic. Just scoot over a bit." I shifted my weight. The metal chair scraped against the floor, and Lauren flinched. She did not look at me. She only looked at the screen. I was an imperfection in her curated life, something to be cropped out. Dinner was served. My plate arrived last. It was smaller than the others, a child's portion of chicken and mashed potatoes that had already developed a cold skin. I watched Lauren pour wine for her friends, a young couple who lived 2 streets over. They laughed, clinking expensive crystal glasses. "This is my mother, Iris." Lauren introduced me, waving a hand vaguely in my direction, as if I were a piece of furniture she inherited and could not get rid of. She is retired now. She mostly just putters around these days, don't you? "Mum?" I cut into my dry chicken. "I volunteer at the library twice a week," I said. Lauren laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "Oh, right. Organizing books. It keeps her busy." She leaned in toward her friend, lowering her voice, but not enough. She wanted me to hear. Or perhaps she simply did not care if I did. "We have to keep an eye on her. You know how it starts. Little things. Forgetting names. Mixing up days." The friend nodded with sympathetic pity. "It is so hard on the caregivers," she whispered. I swallowed the food, though it tasted like ash. I looked around the kitchen. The granite countertops, the custom cabinetry, the vaulted ceilings. I knew exactly what they cost. 5 years ago, I had walked into my bank and liquidated my entire life's savings, $120,000. I had handed the check to Lauren with trembling hands because she said she wanted a safe place to raise a family. "Put the deed in our name, Mom," she had said then, hugging me tight. "It is just so much easier for the mortgage paperwork if we do it this way. You know you always have a home with us." Now, I was the silent investor in my own humiliation. I was not a mother anymore. I was a liability. I remembered the conversation I had overheard just last week, when Lauren thought I was napping in the guest room. She was on the phone with her husband, Mark. She hadn't used my name. She had referred to me as a liquidatable asset that was taking too long to expire. The dinner ended. I stood up, my knees stiff, and clutched my old leather handbag. The strap was worn thin, a stark contrast to the designer bag sitting on Lauren's counter. I should get going, I said. Lauren walked me to the front door. She did not hug me. She stood with her arms crossed, blocking the view of the living room as if afraid I might linger. "Oh, Mom," she said, her tone casual, as if discussing the weather. "Mark and I were talking. We booked an appointment for you next Tuesday with Dr. Evans. Just a little cognitive assessment." I froze, my hand on the doorknob. The cold metal bit into my palm. Why, I asked, keeping my voice steady. "I just had my physical 2 months ago. Just to be safe." She smiled, a predator baring its teeth. "You forgot your glasses at the cafe last week, and we just want to get ahead of things. It is for your own good. We need to make sure you are capable." I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the calculation in her eyes. She wasn't worried about my health. She was building a paper trail. "Right," I said softly, "for my own good." I walked out to my 10-year-old sedan parked on the street, far away from their driveway, so I wouldn't leak oil on their pavement. As I drove away from the perfectly lit streets of Maple Ridge Estates toward my small, rented bungalow in the older, darker part of town, I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. "Mom, we are just protecting you," I mimicked her voice in the silence of the car. "Mom, we are just protecting you." The bitterness coated my tongue like poison. They thought I was losing my mind. They did not realize that for the first time in years, I was seeing everything with terrifying clarity. The silence in my rented bungalow at Brookside Court was heavy, filled only by the humming of a refrigerator that had seen better decades. I sat at my small laminate table, tracing the wood grain with a finger that had scrubbed floors, counted inventory, and wiped tears for 40 years. My mind drifted back to the day Hank died. It was a Tuesday. A crane failure at the steel mill. They gave me a settlement check that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, but it was just paper. It was blood money. I did not buy a new car. I did not go on vacation. I took every single penny and put it into a trust for Lauren's education. I remembered holding her that night in our drafty apartment, her small body curled against my chest. "One day, baby," I had whispered into her hair, "you are going to have a house with a big yard to run in. You won't smell like factory smoke. You will be someone." That promise became my spine. I worked double shifts at the logistics center. I wore coats until the elbows rubbed through. When Lauren went to university, I was so proud my chest hurt. But she came back different. She came back with a sharp look in her eye, scanning our living room with disdain. She stopped seeing me as her mother and started seeing me as a safe, boring wallet. The real shift happened 5 years ago. Lauren had found the house in Maple Ridge. "It was beautiful," she said, "but they were short on the down payment. It is for the grandkids." "Mom," she had pleaded, "don't you want them to grow up safe?" So, I sold the only home I actually owned. I cashed out my 401k. I handed over $120,000. I moved into this rental, telling myself it was a fair trade for my daughter's happiness. Then came the papers. It was a Sunday afternoon. Lauren had placed a stack of documents in front of me while I was watching television. "Just sign here." "Mom," she had said, uncapping a pen, "it is a power of attorney. It just lets me help you pay your bills online. You know how you hate computers. You don't understand how the digital systems work. But I can still write checks." I had protested weakly. "Checks are obsolete. Mom, please, let me help you." Do not be difficult. I signed. I signed because I loved her. I signed because I trusted the flesh I had birthed more than the instinct screaming in my gut. That signature was the beginning of the end. Slowly, my autonomy was stripped away, layer by thin layer. First, she changed my primary care physician to a cheaper clinic across town. Dr. Evans charges too much. She had argued when I complained. We need to be prudent with your savings. Mum, you are not generating income anymore. Then she stopped refilling my cholesterol medication every month, stretching a 30-day supply into 45 days to save a few dollars. When I questioned it, she rolled her eyes. You are fine. Mum, you worry too much. Last year, she sold my car. It was a reliable sedan. Paid off. She told me it was for my safety, that my reflexes were slowing down. But I saw the new landscaping in her backyard 2 weeks later. The worst part was the way she made me doubt my own mind. If I misplaced my reading glasses, she would sigh loudly. Again, Mum. Are you sure you didn't put them in the fridge? We really need to watch this behavior. If I forgot where I set my keys, she would exchange a worried look with her husband. A look that said, she is losing it. I sat alone at my table, the shadows lengthening across the floor. I looked at my hands. They were wrinkled, yes, but they were steady. My mind was not a leaking vessel. It was a steel trap that had simply been rusted shut by too much trust. I started counting the times I had stayed silent, the times I said, it is okay, she is just stressed. The times I said, she knows best. I realized then that I had been training her to treat me this way. I had been an accomplice in my own erasure. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the room into darkness, I felt a shift. The sorrow in my chest was hardening into something cold and sharp. You think I am weak? Lauren, I whispered to the empty room. But you forgot where you came from. I stood up and walked to the window. I was done being the victim. It was time to remind my daughter that the hand that rocks the cradle is also the hand that can tip it over. The fluorescent lights of the Fairmont Ridge Medical Center hummed with a low, irritating buzz that felt like a countdown. I sat on the crinkling paper of the exam table, my hands folded demurely in my lap, watching my daughter dismantle my life with the efficiency of a corporate raider. It is the little things. Dr. Evans, Lauren said, leaning forward in her chair, her face a mask of practiced concern. She forgets to turn off the stove. She leaves the water running. Last week, she called me 3 times in 1 hour because she could not remember if she had taken her blood pressure medication. I am worried about her safety living alone. I looked at Dr. Evans. He was a young man, overworked and tired, prone to believing the well-dressed, articulate daughter over the silent, grey-haired woman. I had not left the stove on in 40 years. I had called her 3 times last week because she had not answered the first 2, and I needed to know why $50 was missing from my grocery account. I see, Dr. Evans said, scribbling on his chart. He looked at me. Iris. Do you feel confused? Often I opened my mouth to speak, but Lauren cut in smoothly. She does not realize it. Doctor, that is the scary part. She thinks she is fine. But, well, the decline is obvious to us. I shut my mouth. Let her talk. Let her paint the picture. What Lauren did not know was that 3 weeks ago, while she was at a yoga retreat, I had taken a taxi to the office of Raymond Kemp, an attorney specializing in elder law. I had heard him on a radio talk show discussing financial exploitation of seniors. I had sat in his leather chair, played him a voicemail Lauren had left me in a rage, and shown him my bank statements. Document everything. Raymond had told me, his eyes hard behind his spectacles. Let her make the first move. We need proof of intent. So, I sat in the doctor's office and let her lie. I let Dr. Evans write mild cognitive impairment suspected in my file. It was a stain on my medical record, but it was also the bait for the trap. On the drive back to my rental, Lauren sighed, gripping the steering wheel. I only want to make sure you are safe. Mom, if something bad happened, I would never forgive myself. I am going to bring over some paperwork tomorrow. The doctor said we should get your affairs in order while you are still lucid. Lucid, I repeated softly. It is just a precaution, she said quickly. She did not wait until tomorrow. At 4 o'clock that afternoon, Lauren's SUV pulled into my driveway. She carried a thick manila envelope that looked heavy enough to crush a person. She spread the papers out on my small kitchen table, a durable power of attorney, a modification to my will, and a document granting full access to all my remaining financial accounts. We should just get this done. Mom, she said, uncapping a pen. Then we do not have to worry. I rubbed my temples, feigning a tremor in my hand. I am so tired. Lauren, I said, letting my voice crack just enough. The doctor's appointment. It wore me out. Can I look at these in the morning? My eyes are blurry. Lauren hesitated. She looked at the papers, then at me. She was impatient, but she needed my signature to be legible. Fine, she said, but her eyes narrowed. Actually, Mom, why don't you come stay at my place for a few nights? There have been reports, burglaries in this neighborhood. I do not feel safe leaving you here alone tonight. It was a lie. Brookside Court was poor, but it was quiet. The only thing being stolen here was my dignity. But this was the move I had been waiting for. If I stayed here, I was just a stubborn old woman. If she took me to her house and forced the issue, she was crossing a legal line. All right, I said submissively. Let me pack a bag. I went into my bedroom. I packed my nightgown and my toothbrush. Then, from the bottom of my sock drawer, I pulled out 2 items Lauren did not know existed. One was an ancient pay-as-you-go flip phone I had bought at a convenience store with cash, fully charged and silent. The other was a small, brass key to a safety deposit box at a bank Lauren did not use. I tucked them deep inside the lining of my toiletry bag. I am ready. I called out. I walked out to her car, clutching my bag. As I locked the door to my small, safe home, I knew I was walking voluntarily into a cage. But Lauren did not understand that I wasn't the prey anymore. I was the Trojan horse. The guest bedroom on the 2nd floor of Lauren's house was decorated in shades of beige and grey, lifeless and cold, like the waiting room of a funeral home. I sat on the edge of the stiff mattress and looked up at the ceiling. In the corner, the smoke detector blinked with a rhythm that was too steady, too purposeful. I squinted, adjusting my glasses. It was not just a sensor. It was a lens, a high-definition eye watching my every move. I realized with a jolt that I was not a guest here. I was an inmate in a minimum security prison, and the warden was my own flesh and blood. The door handle turned, and Lauren entered, carrying a glass of water and 2 blue pills in her palm. Here you go. Mom, she said, her voice dripping with that cloying sweetness she used when she wanted something. Just some vitamins to help you sleep. You looked so agitated today. I recognized them immediately. They were not vitamins. They were heavy sedatives she had likely pilfered from her own prescription cabinet. She wanted me unconscious, so I would be pliant in the morning. I don't need them. Lauren, I said, letting my voice tremble slightly to mask my resolve. I just want to sleep naturally. Take them. Mom, she insisted, stepping closer and pressing the pills into my hand. Please, do it for me. I need to know you are resting properly. You get so confused when you are tired. I placed the pills in my mouth, sliding them skillfully under my tongue, and drank the water. I swallowed hard, exaggerating the gulp for her benefit. Good. She smiled, satisfied. Sleep tight. As soon as she turned her back to leave, I spat the dissolving bitterness into a tissue and buried it deep in the trash can beneath a pile of used tissues. Lauren walked out, pulling the door shut. Then came the sound. Click. A dry, metallic snap of a deadbolt sliding into place from the outside. Then, the jiggle of the handle to test it. The sound hit me physically. My own daughter had locked me in. I did not panic. The time for panic had passed. I slid off the bed and lay on the floor near the heating vent, where the acoustics of the modern house carried sound with surprising clarity. Lauren was downstairs, her voice echoing up the ductwork. She was on the phone? Yeah. She is out like a light, Lauren was saying, probably to that friend from dinner. I locked the door just in case. You know how she gets wandering around at night. I can't have her tripping the alarm. I held my breath, pressing my ear to the cold metal of the vent cover. Tomorrow is the big day. I am going to have her sign the rest of the asset transfers. She's practically senile anyway. She won't even know what she's signing. We just need to get it done before she has another lucid moment. My hand shook, not from fear, but from a rage so cold it burned. We are looking at Morning Glen for her. Lauren continued, her voice casual. 6 months. Tops. Once we sell her rental stuff and liquidate the rest of her accounts, we can afford the deposit. It is better for everyone. Mark wants the extra room back for his office. I reached into my pillowcase and pulled out the ancient flip phone. I flipped it open, the small screen glowing faintly in the dark, and pressed the record button. I held it close to the vent, praying the microphone was good enough. Honestly, Lauren laughed, a sound that made my blood freeze. Sometimes I wonder why she hasn't just died yet. It would be so much easier than dragging this out. I stopped the recording. I saved the file. There it was. The death of our relationship, captured in digital audio. I looked at the phone screen. I had a draft message waiting for Raymond Kemp and another for the Northwind Adult Protective Services hotline. All I had to do was press send. But not yet. I needed the timeline to be perfect. I stood up and paced the room. I catalogued every inch of my cage. The heavy oak door with no lock on the inside. The windows, modern and efficient, fitted with child safety stoppers that prevented them from opening more than 3 inches. There was no fire escape. There was no way out. This was not care. This was unlawful confinement. This was false imprisonment. I memorized the layout, the lack of water in the room, the locking mechanism. These details were sharper weapons than any scream I could muster. I sat back down on the bed, the phone clutched in my hand like a grenade, and waited for the dawn. The room was suffocatingly quiet. the silence broken only by the hum of the central air conditioning pushing through the vent I had just used to record my own daughter's betrayal. I sat cross-legged on the floor, pressing my back against the heavy oak door. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. My legs were cramping, but my mind was moving with the cold, deliberate precision of a grandmaster moving a pawn to trap a queen. I opened the flip phone again. The screen was a small square of blue light in the darkness. I dialed the number for the Northwind Adult Protective Services hotline. I had memorized it weeks ago. When the operator answered, I did not speak immediately. I waited, ensuring the house below was silent. Then I brought the phone to my lips, whispering so softly that the microphone barely caught the sound. I need to report. A case of elder abuse, I said, my voice trembling. My name is Iris Calloway. I am currently locked in a bedroom at my daughter's house at 247 Maple Ridge Drive. The operator asked if I was in immediate physical danger. I am locked in, I repeated, letting a breathless panic seep into my tone. There is no way out. My daughter. She has my medication. And tomorrow. I think I am being prepared to be coerced into signing papers I do not understand. Coerced. That was the magic word. I heard the operator's typing speed up on the other end. That word changed this from a family dispute into a legal emergency. We are logging this report immediately, Mrs. Calloway, the operator said. We will contact local law enforcement for a welfare check first thing in the morning. I hung up and immediately dialed Raymond Kemp's voicemail. I attached the audio file I had recorded of Lauren wishing for my death. Raymond, I whispered into the phone. It is happening. Initiate the protocol. I want the power of attorney revoked, immediately. Freeze the accounts. Get the emergency protection order ready. She locked me in. Raymond, I have the proof. I lowered the phone and took a shaky breath. I needed to know the extent of the damage. I used the slow, clunky data connection on the old phone to access my bank's mobile site. It took forever to load. When it did, I scrolled through the transaction history. My heart hammered against my ribs. There were transfers, dozens of them. Transfer of $200 to joint checking. Memo groceries for Mom. Transfer of $500 to joint checking. Memo gas and transport for Mom. Transfer of $1,000 to joint checking. Memo reimbursement for Mom's care. I stared at the screen. $1,000 I had not cost her a dime in care. I ate oatmeal and toast. I sat in the dark to save electricity. She was bleeding me dry. $10 and $20 at a time, justifying theft as reimbursement. I took screenshots of every single page, my fingers moving with rigid determination. I emailed them all to Raymond. For a moment, the weight of it crushed me. I wanted to stand up. I wanted to pound my fists against the wood of the door and scream until my throat bled. I wanted to wake the neighbors, to wake the world, to scream. I am a person. I am not a checkbook. I reached for the doorknob, my hand shaking violently. Then I stopped. I heard Hank's voice in the darkness, as clear as if he were sitting beside me. Iris. Honey, you don't always have to yell to be heard. Sometimes you just have to wait for them to walk into the trap you set. The loud ones are the scared ones. The quiet ones are the dangerous ones. I pulled my hand back. If I screamed now, if I cried and banged on the door, Lauren would open it and see a hysterical old woman. She would call the paramedics. She would say, "See, she is having an episode. She is aggressive. And they would believe her. My anger would be her evidence. I forced myself to exhale. I let the rage settle into my stomach, heavy and cold like a stone. I reached into my handbag and felt around the bottom until my fingers brushed against cold metal. The key. The small, flat key to the safety deposit box at First Harbour Credit Union. Lauren did not know about this box. Inside it lay the original copy of my will from 10 years ago, and the deed to the rental property she was planning to sell. It was the only thing she could not touch. It was my leverage. I curled up on the hard floor, refusing to go back to the bed where the camera in the smoke detector could see me. I sat with my back against the locked door, my knees pulled to my chest. I gripped the old phone in one hand and the brass key in the other. Let her sleep. I whispered to the empty room. Let her think she has won. I closed my eyes. But I did not really sleep. I just waited, counting the seconds until the sun would rise and bring the judgment day with it. The morning sun sliced through the blinds, casting prison bars of light across the carpet. I was already dressed. I had been sitting in the chair by the window since 4 o'clock, fully clothed, my handbag packed, waiting for the performance to begin. At 8 o'clock sharp, footsteps approached the door. The handle jiggled. Then came the knock. "Mum, are you awake?" Lauren's voice was bright, too loud for the morning. "I have pancakes. Can I come in?" She rattled the handle again, harder this time. "Oh, that is strange," she said, loud enough for an audience that wasn't there. "The door seems to be stuck." "Mum, did you fiddle with the lock?" I sat perfectly still. My hands were folded in my lap. I did not make a sound. She was setting the stage, pretending the lock was a mechanical failure or my own senile error, keeping the key safely in her pocket. Then, the sound I had been praying for cut through her act. The doorbell rang downstairs, a long, authoritative press. I heard Lauren gasp. She hesitated outside my door. "Just a minute," she called out, her voice pitching up. She ran downstairs. I moved to the floor, pressing my ear to the gap beneath the door. "Good morning, officers," Lauren said, her tone shifting to confused concern. "Is everything all right? We received a report regarding a welfare check for an Iris Calloway," a deep male voice said, "and we have a representative from Adult Protective Services with us." "Oh, my goodness?" Lauren laughed nervously. "My mother? She is fine. She is just sleeping. She has been having... well, she gets a little confused lately. I think she might have called you by mistake. We are actually taking her to the doctor today. We need to see her." "Ma'am," the officer said. His voice was not friendly. It was professional. "Now, of course. Come right up. I have to warn you. She can be very dramatic when she's off her medication." They climbed the stairs, the heavy tread of boots and the lighter click of heels. They stopped outside my door. "Mom?" Lauren called out, banging on the wood. "Mom, the police are here. They just want to say hi." "Open the door." "Okay." She rattled the handle again. "See? She must have locked it from the inside. She gets paranoid." "Mom, please open up." I waited. I let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. I let the officers wonder if I was dead or unconscious. "Mrs. Calloway," the officer spoke. "This is Officer Miller from the Ashford Police Department. Can you hear me?" I took a deep breath. I spoke clearly, my voice projecting with the calm authority of a woman who had managed audit teams for 3 decades. "I can hear you. Officer," I said. I cannot open the door because there is no lock on this side. My daughter locked me in here last night at 10 o'clock. The key is in the right pocket of her beige cardigan. The silence in the hallway was absolute. Ma'am? The officer's voice dropped an octave, turning to Lauren. Show me your pockets. She is lying, Lauren stammered, her voice high and thin. She is imagining things. I don't have the pockets. Ma'am. There was a rustle of fabric, then the clink of metal. Open it, the officer ordered. The key turned. Click. The sound was louder than a gunshot. The door swung open. I did not look like a confused old woman. I sat upright in the chair, my posture rigid, my eyes clear. I looked at Lauren. I did not look at her with anger. I looked at her with the cold, clinical detachment of an auditor looking at a fraudulent ledger. Lauren took a step back, her face pale. She had expected fear. She found judgment. A woman in a blazer stepped forward. Mrs. Calloway, I am. Sarah from Adult Protective Services. Are you okay to leave with us? I am, I said, standing up. But before we go, I think you should hear this. I recorded it last night through the vent. I flipped open the old phone. I pressed play. Lauren's voice, tinny but unmistakable, filled the room. Honestly, sometimes I wonder why she hasn't just died yet. It would be so much easier than dragging this out. The recording ended. The air in the room seemed to vanish. Lauren's face turned a mottled red. I was joking, she shrieked, looking from the officer to the social worker. I was just venting to a friend. It was a joke. You can't take that seriously. Officer Miller was not laughing. He was writing in his notebook. His jaw set. Sarah looked at Lauren with an expression of pure professional disgust. That is not a joke. Ma'am, Sarah said quietly. That is a threat assessment factor. I picked up my handbag. I checked that I had my notebook, my phone, and the safety deposit key. I walked past Lauren. I did not look at her. I did not ask her why. I simply erased her from my immediate concern. As I walked out the front door, flanked by the police, I saw the neighbours standing on their manicured lawns, watching. They saw the flashing lights. They saw the perfect daughter standing in the doorway, looking small and defeated. I walked to the police cruiser and did not look back. Not once. The cage was open, and the bird had flown, taking the keys to the kingdom with her. The emergency room doctor at Ashford General was a young woman with tired eyes and a clipboard that held my reputation in its metal clamp. She ran me through the standard battery of tests. I named the president, the year, and counted backward from 100 by sevens. When she finally lowered her pen, the scratching sound of graphite on paper ceased, leaving a heavy silence in the cubicle. Mrs. Calloway, she said, her voice professional and firm. You are alert and oriented times 4. Your blood pressure is 150/95, which is high, but given the circumstances of last night, it is entirely expected. I am discharging you with a clean bill of cognitive health. That single sheet of paper was the first nail in the coffin of Lauren's narrative. I did not go back to Brookside Court. I knew Lauren had a key to that house, and I was done being vulnerable. I took a taxi to the Starlight Motor Inn on the edge of the highway, a place where the carpet smelled of stale cigarettes and the neon sign buzzed all night. It cost $59 a night. It was the best money I had ever spent. I set up my laptop on the scratched laminate desk. The Wi-Fi signal was weak, but it held long enough for a video call with Raymond Kemp. When I played him the recording of Lauren wishing for my death, his professional mask slipped. He took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. Jesus, he muttered, then let out a short, dry laugh that had no humour in it. Well, Iris. She just handed us the case on a silver platter. I am filing an ex parte motion to revoke her power of attorney immediately. We are also filing for a temporary restraining order and a freeze on all assets she has access to. Do it, I said, my voice steady. I want the accounts locked by noon. My next stop was the First Harbour Credit Union. I walked in at 10 o'clock in the morning. The air conditioning was crisp, a stark contrast to the humid motel room. I went straight to the vault. When I slid my key into safety deposit box 402, the tumblers clicked with a satisfying weight. Inside lay my original will and the letters Hank had written me from the mill. These were not the possessions of a scattered, senile woman. They were the organized archives of a life lived with intention. I asked to see the branch manager, a woman named Irene who had known me for 10 years. We sat in her glass-walled office. I need to see the access logs for my online banking. Irene, I said. Specifically for the last 6 months. Irene typed on her keyboard, her brow furrowing as the data populated the screen. That is odd, she murmured. We show multiple logins from an IP address in Maple Ridge, usually between 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the morning. There are scheduled transfers set up to recur on the 15th of every month. I live in Brookside, Irene, I said quietly, and I am asleep at 3 in the morning. Irene stopped typing. She looked at me, and then she looked at the screen. She understood. We are flagging this as fraud pending investigation, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. We spent the next 2 hours restructuring my entire financial existence. We moved the remaining balance of my savings, the money Lauren hadn't managed to siphon off yet, into a new account. It was titled under the Iris Calloway Living Trust. I named myself as the trustee, and the beneficiary was not my daughter. It was the Silver Harbour Fund, a non-profit organisation Raymond and I had selected that morning, dedicated to providing legal aid for elderly victims of financial abuse. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, I had signed a lease for a 1-bedroom apartment at Harbour Oaks Residences. It was a community for independent seniors, gated and secure. I paid the first 6 months of rent up front with a cashier's cheque. I did not list an emergency contact. The final act of the day took place back at the teller counter. I pulled out the secondary debit card linked to my old checking account. It bore the name Lauren Ellison. I placed it on the marble counter. I am closing this account. Irene, I said, please destroy the card. Irene picked up her scissors. She hesitated for a fraction of a second, looking at the name on the plastic. Then, with a decisive snap, she cut the card in half. The sound was sharp and final. Should we send a formal notification to the authorized user, Irene asked, holding the severed pieces of plastic over the trash bin. To let her know the card is no longer active, I adjusted my glasses and looked at the broken plastic falling into the wastebasket. No. Irene, I said, allowing a small, cold smile to touch my lips. Don't bother. She will figure it out when she tries to buy her next latte. And the machine tells her, declined. Harbour Oaks Residences was not a nursing home. It was a reclaiming of territory. My apartment on the 3rd floor had a balcony that faced the east, catching the morning sun that I could now enjoy without anyone rushing me. The community here was a tapestry of lives lived fully. My neighbour to the left, Delia, was a retired history teacher with skin the colour of deep mahogany and a laugh that shook the hallway walls. To my right was Arturo, a 70-year-old man from Mexico whose balcony was a jungle of tomato plants. Iris, Arturo called out one morning, leaning over the railing with a dirt-stained hand extending a ripe, red fruit. For you. Better than the plastic stuff at the store. Eh? I took the tomato, feeling its warmth. Thank you. Arturo. You look good today. Iris, Delia said, walking by with her walking stick. That colour suits you. Not like that grey thing you wore last week. They saw me. They did not see a project or a burden or a checkbook. They saw Iris. That sense of visibility gave me the courage to attend a seminar in the community hall titled Protecting Your Legacy. I sat in the back, listening to a lawyer describe the patterns of financial exploitation. I heard stories of sons who stole deeds and daughters who forged checks. I looked around the room at the nodding heads, the tight lips, and I realized my shame was misplaced. I was not stupid. I was simply a mother who had loved too much. That realization hardened the steel in my spine. It was a Tuesday evening when my burner phone buzzed. It was a number I did not recognize. Can we talk? Please don't tell Mum. It's Maya. My heart skipped a beat. My granddaughter, 19 years old, a freshman at the State University. I hadn't seen her since the dinner where I was seated next to the trash can. I met her at a small coffee shop near her campus, far away from Lauren's prying eyes. Maya looked tired. She wore a hoodie pulled up over her head, her eyes darting around as if she expected her mother to burst through the door. Grandma. She breathed out, sliding into the booth opposite me. I found this in Mom's wallet when she was in the shower. Mr. Kemp's card. Why are you here? Maya, I asked, keeping my hands wrapped around my tea. Maya looked down at her hands. Because I heard her. The night before the police came, I was downstairs getting water. She was on her laptop, logging into your bank account. She was laughing. Grandma. She told Dad. She said you were just digits on a screen to her now. Maya pulled out her phone. I took pictures of her screen. I saw the transfers. I saw the messages she sent to Dad about waiting for you to die so they could pay off the boat. I felt a cold shiver, but I did not flinch. I looked at this young woman, seeing the conflict in her eyes. Maya, I said, my voice low and serious. Listen to me carefully. If you are here just to rebel against your mother because you are angry at her, then go home. I will not be a pawn in a teenage rebellion. No. Maya shook her head violently, tears welling in her eyes. It's not that. It's wrong. What she is doing is evil. I don't want to be part of a family that does this. I reached across the table and covered her hand with mine. Then we have work to do. Over the next week, Maya became my eyes and ears inside the enemy camp. She sent screenshots to Raymond Kemp. She told us the truth about why Lauren was so desperate. Lauren and Mark were drowning in debt. They had maxed out their credit cards to maintain the illusion of their perfect life in Maple Ridge. She is trying to get a new loan. Grandma, Maya whispered to me over the phone one night. She is trying to use your identity as a co-signer. She has your old driver's license number. We were ready for it. Raymond blocked the credit inquiry within minutes. Meanwhile, Lauren was unraveling. My old phone filled up with voicemails. I listened to them in the quiet of my apartment, sipping tea. Mom, pick up the phone. This is ridiculous. You are embarrassing us. Then, an hour later, Mom, please. I am sorry about the lock. I was just stressed. We can fix this. Just call me back. I need to talk to you about the bank. And finally, pure rage. You ungrateful old. Do you know what I sacrificed for you? You owe me this. I did not delete them. I forwarded every single one to Raymond. They were not insults. They were evidence of emotional manipulation and harassment. A few days later, Maya came to visit me at Harbour Oaks. She looked around my small, cozy living room, her eyes widening at the peace of the place. It is really nice here. Grandma, she said, you seem lighter. I am, I said. I walked to the bookshelf and pulled down an old wooden box. It was a chess set that had belonged to Hank. I blew the dust off the lid. Here, I said, handing it to her. Grandpa's chess set, Maya asked, running her finger over the worn varnish. Why, I smiled. A small, tight smile that held no warmth for my daughter, but infinite love for my granddaughter. Take it, I said. Learn how to play. You will need the practice, because in a few weeks, we are going to court. And remember, Maya, a courtroom is just a chessboard where the pieces talk. The hearing at the Northwind County Courthouse was scheduled for 9 o'clock in the morning. The air in the courtroom smelled of lemon floor wax and stale anxiety. Lauren arrived 5 minutes late, flanked by a lawyer who looked like he cost $400 an hour. She wore a modest navy blue dress and low heels, the perfect costume for a grieving daughter trying to save her senile mother. She walked in with her head down, clutching a tissue, expecting to see a confused, disheveled old woman cowering in the defendant's chair. She did not expect to see me. I sat at the defense table, wearing my charcoal suit that had been freshly pressed. My hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant bun. To my right sat Raymond Kemp, looking like a shark in a pinstripe suit. To my left sat Sarah from Adult Protective Services. I was not cowering. I was sitting with my spine as straight as a steel beam. When Lauren saw me, her step faltered. The mask of the martyr slipped for a fraction of a second, revealing the panic underneath. The proceedings began. Lauren's lawyer, a man named Mr. Sterling, stood up and smoothed his tie. Your Honor, he began, his voice dripping with faux sympathy. We are here today because Iris Calloway is no longer capable of caring for herself. She forgets to eat. She leaves the stove on. She wanders. My client, her only daughter, has sacrificed her own comfort to protect her mother. We are simply asking for legal guardianship to ensure Mrs. Calloway does not hurt herself or squander her remaining assets in confusion. Lauren dabbed at her dry eyes. It is so hard. She choked out when the judge asked her to speak. I just want Mum to be safe. She gets so angry when she's confused. I just want to help her. It was a good performance, but it was just that, a performance. Raymond Kemp stood up. He did not use adjectives. He used paper. Your Honor, Raymond said, his voice calm and bored. I would like to submit Exhibit A, a medical evaluation performed 3 days ago at Ashford General Hospital. The attending physician notes that Mrs. Calloway is alert, oriented, and scored a perfect 30 on the cognitive assessment. He slid the paper across the bench. The judge, a middle-aged woman named Judge Vance with sharp eyes, read it over. And Exhibit B, Raymond continued. An audio recording taken on the night of December 9th. He pressed play on his laptop. The courtroom speakers crackled, and then Lauren's voice filled the room, clear and cruel. Honestly, sometimes I wonder why she hasn't just died yet. It would be so much easier than dragging this out. Lauren froze. The tissue in her hand stopped moving. The color drained from her face, leaving her looking like a wax statue. And Exhibit C, Raymond said, relentless. Bank records showing 25 unauthorized transfers from my client's account to a joint account held by the plaintiff. Note the IP addresses. Your Honor. These logins occurred at 2 o'clock in the morning from the plaintiff's residence, while my client was asleep 5 miles away. Mr. Sterling tried to object, stammering something about context, but then came the final blow. A young woman stood up in the back of the courtroom. "I would like to speak," a voice said. It was Maya. Lauren whipped around, her eyes wide with shock. "Maya, what are you doing? Sit down. I am a witness," Maya said, walking to the stand. She looked terrified, but she did not look away. "Maya," the judge asked gently, "what do you have to add?" Maya took a deep breath. She gripped the railing of the witness stand until her knuckles were white. "My mother. She told me to lie," Maya said, her voice trembling. "She told me that if Grandma asked about money, I should say she already spent it. She called Grandma her backup fund. She said we just had to wait until Grandma was legally incompetent so we could pay off the boat and the credit cards." "She is lying," Lauren screamed, jumping to her feet. "She is a child. She doesn't know what she is saying. Mother, you put her up to this. You brainwashed her. Sit down, Ms. Ellison," Judge Vance barked, slamming her gavel. Then Sarah from Adult Protective Services stood up. "Your Honor," Sarah said efficiently, "when we arrived at the residence for the welfare check, Mrs. Calloway was locked in a room with a deadbolt keyed from the outside. There was no water. We also recovered unprescribed sedatives in the room. This was not care. This was unlawful imprisonment. The silence that followed was heavy." Lauren looked around the room, realizing the walls were closing in. Her narrative of the loving daughter had been shredded. She looked at me, pleading with her eyes, trying to find the soft mother she had exploited for years. She found only a mirror reflecting her own greed. Judge Vance adjusted her glasses and looked down at Lauren with pure disdain. "The petition for guardianship is denied with prejudice," the judge ruled, her voice cutting through the air like a guillotine. "I am issuing an immediate temporary restraining order preventing Ms. Ellison from accessing any of Mrs. Calloway's finances or property. Furthermore, I am referring this evidence to the District Attorney's Office for a criminal investigation regarding elder abuse, fraud, and false imprisonment. We are adjourned." Lauren slumped into her chair, burying her face in her hands. I stood up. I did not smile. I did not gloat. I simply nodded to Maya, picked up my purse, and walked out of the courtroom, leaving the wreckage of my daughter's lies behind me. The silence in Raymond Kemp's office was a stark contrast to the chaotic noise of the courtroom. The heavy mahogany desk was covered in documents, each one a brick in the wall I was building between my past and my future. My hand did not shake as I signed the final page of the trust agreement. "This transfers the remaining proceeds from the rental sale and your unliquidated savings, roughly $80,000, into the Silver Harbor Fund," Raymond explained, his voice low and respectful. "It will be used to provide legal defense for women over 60 who are victims of familial financial abuse." "Good," I said. "And this?" Raymond slid the last document across the polished wood. "Removes Lauren Ellison as a beneficiary from all remaining accounts, insurance policies, and estate plans." She receives nothing. Not a cent. Iris. Are you absolutely sure about this? I looked at the paper. I thought of the cold chicken next to the trash can. I thought of the lock clicking shut on my bedroom door. I have never been more certain of anything in my life. I replied, signing my name with a flourish. The receptionist buzzed. Lauren was here. She had demanded a final talk, and Raymond had reluctantly agreed, on the condition that it be recorded. Lauren walked in alone. She looked smaller than she had in the courtroom, stripped of her arrogance. She sat in the chair opposite me, wringing her hands. "Mom, I am sorry," she started, her voice trembling. "I just got overwhelmed. The debt, the pressure. I didn't mean to hurt you." I sat silently, watching her. I did not offer comfort. When my silence stretched too long, her sorrow curdled into the anger I knew so well. Her eyes narrowed. "You are giving it all away, to strangers. You are destroying the future of your own grandchild, just to spite me. Do you know what that money could do for Maya? Maya's future should not be built on money stolen from her grandmother," I said, my voice calm and steady. "I was protecting you," Lauren hissed. "You are old. Mom, you don't need that money." I leaned forward. "The night you locked me in that room, you thought you were taking my freedom. You thought you were shutting me away. But actually, Lauren, that was the night you handed me the key I had been too afraid to pick up for years. It was the key to finally close the door that you were standing in." Lauren stared at me, her mouth open. She stood up, her face twisted. "Fine. If that is how you want it. You will never see Maya again. I will make sure of it. You will die alone. When you use love as a weapon, Lauren," I said softly, "you will be surprised when the person you are shooting at finally decides to move out of the way. I am not standing there anymore." She stormed out. The door clicked shut. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. Later that evening, I walked into my new apartment at Harbour Oaks. The space was small, but it was mine. I took the new ring of keys, the key to the front door, the key to the mailbox, the key to my small fireproof safe, and dropped them into a ceramic bowl on the entry table. Clink. It sounded like a bell tolling for the start of a new life. My phone buzzed on the counter. It was a text from Maya. "Grandma, can I come over for dinner tonight? I have a frozen lasagna that tastes terrible, but maybe you can bake a cake." I smiled, typing back with fingers that no longer felt arthritic with worry. "Bring the lasagna, but mostly, just bring your real self. That is enough." I walked to the balcony door and slid it open. The evening wind from the harbour rushed in, cool and smelling of salt and rain. I stepped out and looked down at the parking lot, where cars were pulling in and out, where people were rushing home to their families, to their dramas, to their lives. I leaned against the railing, taking a deep breath of air that tasted entirely of freedom. They ask why I am still alive, why I didn't just fade away as society expects old women to do. This is my answer. I turned back into the warm light of my kitchen to put the kettle on for tea. The darkness was outside, but in here, everything was bright. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please drop a comment below and share your thoughts on today's episode. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, like this video, and show some extra support by hitting that hype button so this story can reach even more people who might need to hear it.